Good evening and welcome to SportsZone. I'm your host, Makenzie Freeman, and this is our first episode of the semester. I would say it would be a good show, but we have to talk about the Dallas Cowboys and UNT's butt whooping that they had this weekend. And here to talk about the UNT Mean Green with me today is Gabe Ife and Gabby Pippins. Guys, this past weekend, UNT took the loss 66-21. Pretty bad loss. But Gabe, I know you were at the game. Did the UNT fan base at least travel well?
Yes, you're right. I made the trip up, and the UNT fan base, while they did not see a great game, which we'll get into in just a minute, a lot of them came up. A lot of them showed out. We saw the hype videos the days before on the social media kind of promoting it, and they really did listen to those videos and come up there. I saw plenty in like the designated section, but there was green throughout the whole stadium. It was cool to see that.
And I'm glad you mentioned the hype because that's one of the questions I want to get into. UNT obviously went into that Texas Tech game 2-0 on the year, but their wins were against South Alabama and Stephen F. Austin. Do you guys think the Mean Green fan base went into this Texas Tech game too hyped, too fast, Gabby?
Definitely, and unfortunately that includes me. You know, I really thought we had a chance. I was trying to be really optimistic about it, especially with the new players that we've gotten through the transfer portal, but I think we just counted our eggs or chickens before they hatched. I think that we definitely should have been more cautious, especially going up against a school like Texas Tech. But there's hope, I think.
Gabe, your thoughts?
I'll tell you, it was the perfect storm. Texas Tech was coming off of a bad loss at Washington State, and previously in their home opener, they barely beat Abilene Christian FCS team. UNT, however, coming off their first 2-0 start since 2018, I saw everything on Twitter. I saw all the posts. Our fans were way overhyped. They didn't realize they'd be running in the perfect storm of a mad Texas Tech team coming off of a bad loss at Washington State versus a UNT team. However, that we were 2-0. South Alabama didn't look that great the week following the week one, and the win against SFA was not very inspiring. So it was just kind of the perfect storm and led to the blowout we saw.
Right, and our last question as a result of this game is, in the American Conference, obviously we're not a Power 4 conference, but we still have some quality teams, Memphis, Tulane, East Carolina, who's a little bit sneaky this year. Do you guys think this game has helped us in any way to prep for these games?
I don't think so. Sorry to take this.
No,
I'll
you're
go
good.
first. I really don't think so. I think teams like Memphis and Tulane could absolutely run us out of the building if we don't pick it up from a performance like that. Those are the two teams I would say that have the best shot of, if they play Tech, possibly beating them and maybe beating them after. You saw Memphis beat Florida State this weekend. Tulane's a great program. You know, ECU lost, but they're an up-and-coming team. Tulsa's getting better under, I believe, second-year head coach as well. But we aren't prepared for any of those teams. South Alabama was the only game that prepared us, and their defense has shown to be not great. And so I don't think we're prepared. I think we're going to have to go into this week against Wyoming, against a not very great Group of 5 team, but we really need to figure our own selves out before we can go into conference play.
Absolutely. I wish I could say that this has prepared us, but the only thing it may have prepared us for is loss. I mean, if we don't get it together, especially like Coach Eric Morris said, if they don't do some soul searching, then I think this is just going to continue to play out over the weeks, and it's just going to be loss after loss, which I really hate to say. I really want UNT to finally have their year, have their season, especially with the new guys that we've gotten, new coaching, new quarterback. This would be the perfect time for us to actually do something. So I think we just really need to try to improve and prepare even more because this didn't prepare us at all.
Right, and talking about this team in general, you have a team who has their a coach that's in their second year, and the offense was firing on all cylinders last year. I mean, I don't know the exact statistic on it, but we were scoring around 30 points per game with obviously Chandler Rogers, Ayo Adeyi, Jamori Macklin, all three whom have transferred out of the program. How do you see this year's offense comparing to last year's offense? Gabe, I'll start with you.
I would say it has not gone well. South Alabama is looking a little bit like a flash in the pan compared to our performances against Stephen F. Austin and Texas Tech. Now, I don't want to say that because it's still very early. We're only 3 games in. You look at guys like Damon Moore Jr., who did amazing week 1 against South Alabama. You look and you say maybe comparing to Jamori Macklin. Well, he wasn't really a factor in our game, our biggest game so far of the year against Tech last week. Didn't do too much against SFA either. You look at guys like Chandler Morris. At this point, he's looking like a downgrade. And it's early. He has plenty of time to rebound and get his confidence back. That's what he looked like he lost in the game against Tech this past Saturday. But he's looking like a downgrade so far, and that's not to write him off just yet. I believe he can come back and bounce back. But as of right now, he's not looking great. And then Ike Ragsdale was kind of a running back that had been mentioned prominently. I saw in different previews, and he was hurt against Tech. And week 1 was the only week he really made a big impact. And so when you have guys like him and Zach Evans at the running back spot that aren't living up to Iowa, you're going to struggle. And we really need some of those guys to step up.
Right.
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you said there, especially comparing the Chandlers. I think that right now, like you said, it is a little early to kind of judge and just go ahead and say this is an upgrade, this is a downgrade, or we stayed the same. But just comparing one really pivotal stat here, Chandler Rogers only had 5 interceptions the entire season last year. We're already at 6. And we've only had 3 games. So that's definitely an area of concern for our quarterback. Like you said, comparing like our old running backs and wide receivers, Iowa Day, I mean, he was great. He had over 1,000 yards last season. His average was just way better than what we're working with right now. And it was kind of hard to choose people to at least try to compare them against because we've only had a couple of touchdowns so far this season. We only had 1 touchdown from Wyatt Young last week, also one from Shane Porter, our running back. So I just don't think it's fair to compare them to what we had, especially knowing that we had an entire season with these guys and they've just really gotten started. But what I will say is there is potential. I will say we definitely do just have to work better, work harder, do that soul searching that Eric Morris was talking about. But we can't continue on this path, especially with our interceptions, because it does no good to, score 2 or 3 touchdowns if we're going to have 3 or more interceptions and just give the ball right back to the other team. So I just think we really need to improve not only with our quarterback, but also a little bit on our defense, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit.
To kind of get into that point real quick, if it's okay if I jump in.
Yeah.
Against SFA, you would see Eric Morris. They showed him several times on the Jumbotron at the stadium, just ripping into the offense, having huddles with the team in the 3rd and 4th quarters, just absolutely ripping into them. It gave me a little hope that coming into this week against Tech, that the offense had a hard week at practice, I assume, don't kind of get ready, but nobody was ready. No. Chandler Morris, we said, didn't do great. He had 3 interceptions, I believe. I believe 2 of those one was a pass off the helmet, hit him in the visor, and another one, I believe, went off the hands. So he didn't have a good game. I'm not saying he had a great game at all, to say the least, but it looked like the whole offense was just not prepared, not ready.
And the other was a pick 6, which we really can't have.
Yeah, after being down and taking the beating from the Tech offense, definitely having Texas Tech's defense scoring on you did not help confidence at all, offensively or defensively, which we'll get into. Last year, UNT's defense struggled a lot. Quite literally, in terms of rankings, the worst defense in NCAA football at the Division I level. What do you guys think about this year's defense? Have we made changes? Are they looking better? Gabby, what are your thoughts?
It's really difficult to say, but just comparing the amount of, yards allowed per game, last season was, I think, 476, 478. We're already at 472 because we allowed 586 last week. We allowed only 248 against Stephen F. Austin, which I thought was great. I think that really showed that, man, we have a much better defense. We're finally getting it. Because I will say really quickly, their defense has struggled since I have been here, since fall 22. So I'm hoping that they can finally get what they need here. They've changed the schemes. They've made additions and gotten rid of some people, but it's just still not there. They had 582 against South Alabama. Even though that was still a win, that's still unacceptable. So it's a little early to call it right now, but I'd say that their defense is the same, if anything worse.
I have to disagree with you on one thing. That SFA game, while it was 250-something yards you mentioned, it's an FCS school. It is.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And they're not even
you
ranked in
factor
the
it.
top 25
They're not
of
ranked in the,
FCS.
yes.
Yeah.
They have not been proven to be a great FCS school. So while it was better that week, it hasn't been great. I want to kind of place a big emphasis on the three-man front for Jeff Capone's defensive style. It was one of the worst last year, and it's shown to not improve at all this year. Taj Brooks had an absolute day, and so I really think that was a problem.
Yeah, well, that covers it, and when we come back, we'll talk about another North Texas team that got stumped in football.
Did you know you have access to video equipment like DVDs, video games, and cameras? That's right, you do. Come on down to Chilton Library and fulfill your media dream. Located on the bottom floor next to the student sculpture. Hope to see you there soon.
Hey girl, you know you look good. I like the way you move and groove. I'm not sure.
Good evening, my name is Amanda Hasbell and I'm joining you here today in the Union Parking Garage. Today we're going to be going over how to drive safely in the parking garage. Let's go see. Oh my god, this girl just got hit by a car. Let's go see what happened. Ma'am, are you okay? Are you okay?
Did you see that lady hit me with a car?
Yeah, we did. I got it all on video.
Oh my god.
Let's go over here and talk about how we can prevent that.
Yeah, not the hospital.
Well, right now we're going to ask you a couple questions on how we can drive safely in the parking lot. What are ways that we can be aware of our surroundings?
Oh, we can look both ways.
Jenna, also, how about putting the distractions away?
Yes, just like our phones, turning our music down, and also not focusing on our passengers.
Where can you get information on how to get a parking pass?
Transportation.
There's no harm in wanting to have fun while in college, but it's easy to lose track of how much you've had. Apps like Drink Control and Alkadroid can help keep track of your consumption and blood alcohol levels. If you or someone else does drink too much, the signs of alcohol poisoning are as follows: pale skin, vomiting, confusion, low body temperatures, irregular breathing, blacking out, and it's hard to wake up or cannot be woken up.
Dude, are you okay? Hey, what's wrong? Wake up.
It's an exciting time of year, but it's important to be responsible. If you suspect someone is suffering from alcohol poisoning, get help immediately. You will not get in trouble for seeking help if you are underage. For more info and resources, go to UNT's Division of Student Affairs.
Are you behind?
Good evening and welcome back to Sports Zone. We're here to talk about the Dallas Cowboys as they took a loss at home this weekend to the New Orleans Saints. Here to talk to me about that game is Isaiah Ortiz and Griffin Flack. Guys, before we get into this game, let's go back and talk about that defense against the Browns and what your general takes on the defense are. Isaiah, I'll let you go first.
Well, I thought there were a lot of initial positives going into that week with the Browns. I thought the linebacker play was absolutely excellent against that Browns running game. So going into this week, I thought there were a lot of things that they did well, but obviously they did not.
And Griffin, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have a lot of question marks about that run game right now, especially after this past week with the Saints. But overall, I think that the secondary, even though they lost Deron Bland, they still have Trayvon Diggs, who's one of the best corners, one of the best ball hawks in the league. They did go against the Browns, so we have to kind of take that with a grain of salt, right? But overall, I think that the Cowboys defense did really well against the Browns, albeit they're not a very good team, but hey, they still got the win.
Right, and then moving on to this past week, obviously they take the loss against the Saints. One question I wanted to ask you guys, after seeing the Saints beat Carolina like they did, obviously it was Carolina, so people were like, most teams could do that. But then they march into Dallas, give Dallas kind of what's coming to them, and kind of blow them out of the water, stun them. Do you guys think the Saints team is like that, or do you think the Cowboys just weren't prepared for this team? Griffin?
Well, the Saints got a new offense coordinator in Clint Kubiak from, I think, the Niners. So they just did a phenomenal job at exploiting the weaknesses in the Cowboys defense, like that run defense. They just don't have the personnel right now to be able to stop the run. And I think that's what's going to be the kind of the downfall of the Cowboys if they don't do well this season, is that run defense. And Micah Parsons, they tried to exploit him in the run game. The key to the Cowboys right now is getting ahead so they can let their pass rushers and Micah and DeMarcus Lawrence run free at the quarterback. So the Saints, I I mean, they did blow out the Panthers, but it's the Panthers.
Right,
But the
exactly.
Cowboys, that was a very surprising blowout because Cowboys play really well at home. The offense plays well, the defense plays well. I think that Dan Quinn leaving plays a big factor in the defensive struggles so far. But I do think the Saints will be able, I think they will win the NFC South, especially with this offense coordinator in Clint Kubiak.
Isaiah, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm going to disagree with you from the defensive coordinator standpoint because for the past 3 years, all we've talked about was can't stop the run, can't stop the run, can't stop the one. And I'm really thinking about the personnel at this point because it's literally against all these 49ers systems like you've mentioned. Last year with Green Bay, this year with the Saints, the 49ers, a lot of these play action teams, a lot of outside zone concepts that have really stumped the Cowboys for the past 3 years. And even with the coordinator change, I really think it's on the players to step up and really make their mark if they want to stop the run against those type of teams.
Right, and in terms of the offense, we've played against the Browns. Obviously, we got a big win. The offense didn't look like it was 100% there. You kind of saw that get exposed in week 2 against the Saints. What does this offense need to do to get ready for teams like the Ravens next week, the Eagles, other teams like that, Isaiah?
I think the offense looked okay. Like, it didn't look the greatest, obviously, but there were some positives going into it. The only negative I have is the run game. It did look like our worst fears were imagined, like very inefficient, lackluster. I think we only averaged about 3 yards per carry, which is not going to work against a Ravens defense that looks really good coming into next week. So things definitely need to pick up, but I thought Dak looked good. I thought the passing game looked efficient, and those are the only positives I have going into next week. Hopefully they can channel some momentum during practice, maybe incorporate some more deep balls, maybe get a guy like Ryan Flournoy involved at wide receiver because Tolbert and Brooks weren't really panning out for this game. But definitely some positives, but mostly negatives on the offensive end.
Yeah, I would have to start with, you've got to be able to run the ball if you want to be able to have hopes at winning the Super Bowl like the Cowboys obviously do. I wouldn't play Zeke as my starter. I would not play Zeke in 2024 as my starter. I'd give Deuce Vaughn some reps.
But who do you place at the starter though at that point?
Dowdle, he's young. You just can't play Zeke at this point in his career, all the snaps they were playing. They had 46 yards rushing for the whole game.
Right.
You can't do that. To beat the good teams like the Ravens, they got the Lions coming up. They got the Niners. You got to be able to run the ball. You got to be able to stop the run because all those teams are very good at the run. And that starts with loading the box. And on the offensive end, someone other than CeeDee Lamb has to step up.
Right.
CeeDee Lamb can't be the only one catching the passes. And I do think a part of the Cowboys' problem against Saints is because Jake Ferguson was out.
Right,
He's a big red zone target. So, when you get down the red zone, they were very inefficient in the red zone in both games, actually. So Jake Ferguson, him coming back, I think he comes back soon. He'll be a big red zone target for them, and they'll score more points than they did.
And I'm really glad you guys mentioned this run offense because in free agency, they had no urgency to pick up a running back one, obviously. So I feel like your offense, even though you do have the Ezekiel Elliott, your run offense is stacked with a bunch of RB2. So what does your offense look like when you don't have an RB1? Isaiah?
Yeah, obviously, if you can't establish the run, you can't establish anything. And that was really the Achilles heel for the Cowboys last year with Tony Pollard as their RB1. But now you don't really have the guy back there, which so long the Dallas Cowboys have had either a guy or a couple of guys, going back to the days of prime Zeke, DeMarco Murray, Felix Jones back there, guys like that. So definitely a struggle, obviously, for the Cowboys. And hopefully it can improve. Maybe Dalvin Cook comes in, provides something, but I doubt it.
Right, and we can grill into nitpicky things about the Cowboys all day, but we're not Stephen A. Smith, so we'll move on to some positives. What strengths are you guys seeing in this Dallas Cowboys team, Griffin?
They're able to move the ball well, in my opinion. But like I said, the red zone efficiency is a problem. A strength, once you get past the 50-yard line, it seems like it's automatic points with Brandon Aubrey. That is a strength. You're going to get points from there. But Dak Prescott needs to show he's worth $60 million. CeeDee Lamb is getting open. Dak Prescott, he missed a couple throws. But like I said, you got to find someone else other than CeeDee Lamb to get open. But, I mean, they're getting down in the red zone. They just got to cash in. I think Jake Ferguson will help that.
Yeah, I agree on the Ferg standpoint, but again, please, everybody, Cowboys haters everywhere, stop blaming Dak for everything. It doesn't help when his wide receiver's running a dig route and he slips, causing the pick and ruining any momentum they have going into halftime. That could be a completely different game if Jalen Brooks doesn't slip on that route and causes another interception. But like you said, the efficiency's there. I do think it'll get better with Jake Ferguson, but one thing that still trips me up is the run game in the red zone. Is that going to be a problem? Because it was a problem last year.
Right, and it seems like the Dallas Cowboys have their own set of weaknesses. So what do you guys think is the biggest weakness that they need to work on this week in practice as they have the Ravens next week at home? Isaiah?
Oh, 1,000% linebacker play. Like, I was so high on it in week 1, but week 2, I thought that was the losing factor going into this week. It reminded me a lot of what they did against the Cardinals last year. No one's filling the gaps. No one's, playing fast like they were, not as physical as they were in week 1. So I really think when that steps up, especially when DeMarcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons are seeing a lot of attention from the offensive line, that's what opens up the gaps, and the linebackers have to fill and play better and not allow 4 touchdowns.
And Griffin, your thoughts really quick?
Yeah, I was just going to say the run defense has to be better, especially against the Ravens with Lamar, who's going to get a ton of rushes, and Derrick Henry now. So I would definitely say the run game and the run offense too. Like the offensive line has to play better. They got to open holes. They got to also protect Dak Prescott. Terrence Steele they were talking high of him in camp. He just hasn't looked like that sharp these first 2 games. But yeah, you got to be able to stop the run if you want to compete.
Right, and like I mentioned, the Cowboys will face off against the Ravens this week at home on Sunday. And when we come back, we'll talk about a UNT program that has been doing really well to start their season.
I'm here to rescue you.
Oh, my friends.
Not so fast.
This story is going to be awesome.
The do's and don'ts of the Pole Rec Center. See that man over there? Please do not hog weights. Instead, do this. Another important part is having an attentive spotter. See, here is an example of a non-attentive spotter. Instead, do this. Now we head to the track, which should be pretty easy, just it's important to pay attention to the way the track goes. Remember to wipe down the equipment after you're done using it. The towels are provided by the gym, so it's pretty easy to wipe down the equipment when you are done. Thank you for using the Pole Recreation Center.
Welcome back to SportsZone. I'm your host, Makenzie Freeman, and the UNT soccer program is off to a pretty good start as they're 4-2 on the season, 1-0 in conference play. And here to talk about the Mean Green soccer team with me is Isaiah Ortiz and London Stewart. Guys, getting into the first conference game, they take the win over Florida Atlantic. How do they look heading into the rest of their conference play, Isaiah?
Yeah, I definitely think the defense improved from what it was to start the season. Obviously, gave up a lot of goals to start that game. But shout out the defense, especially the goalkeeper. Got the conference goalie of the week, I think. So
yeah.
Very good play from her. Really expect that going into the conference play because they are still a top team to be messed with in the American Conference.
Right. And and London, what are your thoughts on the team?
I mean, yeah, like you said about the defense, the goalie had 6 saves, and, they only had 2 penalties, I heard. Just watching the game, they were real, defensive. So it's a defensive-led team. So just seeing that, they played really well, scoring 1 goal, though, but holding FAU to 0.
Right. And let's talk about Coach Headland. He is an incredible coach. I would say the best coach in UNT program history, whether that be football, soccer, basketball. I mean, 30 years with the program, doesn't have a losing record. Do you guys think they keep it up this year, London?
I mean, yeah, I think they would keep it up because with the culture that coach has, implemented within the program, it has been very well. With the seniors and the graduates that are leaving, they're coaching up those young underclassmen, letting them know how UNT soccer culture is. So I do feel, they can keep that up in the years coming.
Right, and Isaiah, your thoughts?
Yeah, the standard is the standard, obviously, and the standard is winning seasons for UNC. I expect that to reach the 30 this year. I think the streak's at like 29 this year, but they look pretty good, so expect it to reach 30.
Right, and let's talk about UNT soccer in their preseason. They faced off against they faced off against 5 Power 5 schools, lost to 2 of them, and then I think they tied the rest of them. How have those Power 5 conference games help them get prepared for conference play? Isaiah?
Yeah, I think the main positive, even though they went 0 for 3, they still were very competitive in those games, only losing by 1 goal in every single game. Specifically against the game against Alabama, ranked team number 20 in the nation. They had that game tied, except score in the 79th minute, but then they give up a goal in the 80th minute.
Yeah.
That's something that's very tough, something you can't really come back from in soccer. But I really do think that the shots on goal were there, got more shots on goal than either of those teams, which is a positive. Hopefully they can finish throughout conference play. But I think when you're competitive against these Power 5 schools, it's a really big positive going into conference play.
Right. In London?
I mean, yeah, back to what, talking about coaches, just the structure of the schedule, playing those Power 5 schools early on in the season, get you pretty much ready to play Group of 5 teams, not, underestimating those Group of 5 teams, but, with Colorado scoring 4 goals and, UNT having 3, they're losing by 1 point in each game that they're playing these Power 5s. They're putting up a pretty good match. Like you said, Alabama, 20th in the country. They're playing teams at such a high standard that, when you're aiming for the ceiling, you're aiming to fall really low and, able to produce well against those Group of 5 teams.
Right, and London, you mentioned, how the upperclassmen kind of set the standard for the lowerclassmen, and you mentioned that the team has a lot of freshmen, sophomore players. How important is it for the girls to be getting along and those upperclassmen to establish that culture for a program that's been as storied as UNT's?
I mean, yeah, like with any, sport, with the chemistry in the program, that's very vital. And, with those upperclassmen having previous seasons where they're winning, they can coach up those young players, especially them having, a lot of freshmen and juniors. They're coming out of high school, not too long ago, but you're having graduate students who's been around this winning culture with the coach, in the previous year. So that's very vital. Chemistry and also camaraderie as well.
Right. Isaiah, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think when you get a lot of young players to buy in early on, like you mentioned, that's culture. That's really a standard that's been set here at UNC, and especially recruiting-wise, you get people who are ready to play right away and who are ready to, most importantly, contribute right away to winning. So I think building that young culture and having them build up from freshmen all the way to seniors and continuing to set the standard of UNC soccer is a really big deal.
Not to mention the transfer portal. I mean, I know it's a heavy-hitting story with football, basketball, maybe even baseball, but it's not really talked about with the soccers, the volleyballs, other sports like that. So how do you think the culture that Coach Hedlund has provided has helped with, dealing with the transfer portal and NIL, Isaiah?
Well, I think as opposed to the sports you just named, soccer is not like as big of a sport compared to them, so there's not as big as a market to really transfer and like make a name for yourself. So really setting a culture here and not really looking for any other exits when there's no reason to leave is a really big deal, especially like you said, in the era of NIL where people are leaving left and right. The culture has been set here, a winning culture, most importantly, is really important to keeping your culture together.
Right. London?
I mean, yeah, with the coach, having the previous winning season, keeping that staff around you, with those transfers coming in, the ideologies that you're telling them is foreign to them. So making sure you're having that solid foundation, of people around you that are also implementing the culture that's around. And like I talked about earlier, with those, upperclassmen also implementing that, because a great team, it has great leaders as coaches and also as players.
Right, and Isaiah, earlier you mentioned Maddie Ogden. I mean, UNT in their first 7 games only allowed 11 goals. Yeah. Looking at Maddie Ogden's stats, 22 saves, 4 shutouts, 5 goals allowed. I mean, how much pressure is she taking off of this UNT offense by being in that goal?
Oh, so much pressure. And I think the stat is a little bit inflated because they gave up 6 goals in their first 2 games. But yeah, she's really helped. she's really helped out the offensive lot. And once the offense got going, the defense was there, and it's really all coming together for UNC at the right time before conference play.
Right. And London?
You know, like you said, you know, games are based off defense. When you have a player that's, you know, preventing so many goals, it makes the game so much easier. Like you said, taking the pressure off all of the teammates. We can just go down and just kick the ball because we trust in our teammate at the back. She's going to make sure nobody else scores. So as long as we're applying pressure, that's really, you know, vital for a team to have a defensive-minded team.
Right, and I can probably talk about Maddie Ogden all day. I think she's a really good player in this UNT soccer program. But who are some of our other big players that you guys are seeing? London, I'll start with you.
You know, I seen Alexis Miller. She had a very good goal in the last game against Florida Atlantic. You know, she's also an underclassman as well. I feel like, you know, coach, he can, you know, use her to in the you know, coming years, you know, as a leader who can implement that culture for the players that's coming in as well.
Isaiah?
Yeah, another name I'm looking at, Rachel Roebuck here, plays forward, so a lot of offense is needed for her to step up and really take the pressure off Maddie Ogden and the defense as well. Hopefully they step it up just a little bit because the offense has been a little down lately, but really with her, Alexis Miller, another name like that, I really trust UNC to get it done.
Right, and as I mentioned earlier, UNT 1-0 to start their American Conference play. I believe they face Tulsa this upcoming Thursday. Where do you guys see them landing in the American Conference?
Yeah, I still think they're a top 3 team. I think the top 2 teams right now is Rice, who's off to a really hot start, and then East Carolina as well. But those 2 teams don't worry me because I know what UNC soccer is, and I believe they'll get it done and be right back at the top of the conference.
Right. And
You
London?
know, I feel like they'll produce very well. You know, plenty of Power 5 schools early on in the season has gave them a good, you know, gist of where they're at in their season. And also Memphis is a pretty good team as well. But I feel like UNT can contend for the top 3 spot in the conference.
Right, and as we go on to face Tulsa this upcoming week, we faced Abilene Christian on Sunday. That resulted in a tie, but Maddie Ogden got that PK save. How do you guys think we're looking up against Tulsa, Isaiah?
Yeah, I think we're looking pretty good. Offense, like I said, does need to get it going just a little bit. But you have those get-right games. You got, I think, one of the games they even won 9-0. So hopefully those things translate into conference play starting next week.
Right, and London?
And also they're coming off a win against Florida Atlantic. You know, I feel like they can carry that momentum into the coming game against Tulsa. And also Maddie Ogden, if she continues to play at the high performance that she's producing, you know, the offense is going to come like you were just talking about. If they continue to step up the offense, they're going to be pretty good this season.
Right. Do you guys see them getting a national ranking? You see them landing in the top 25 if they can keep their momentum up, Isaiah?
Yeah, I do think that the voters will look at their performances against top schools. Hopefully they'll hold it against them that they lost, but hopefully they'll look at dominant conference play, which I expect, and they say, you know what, let's get the mean green in there. They deserve it.
Right.
I mean, you know, group of 5s really don't get no love, you know.
It depends on the sport.
Yeah,
Basketball and soccer, you can sneak in there.
Right, but you know, with their strength of schedule, you know, playing teams in the preseason that were Power 5s, you know, the voters, they may consider that, you know, in the coming years, they're losing about 1 point against, you know, 20th ranked Alabama. That's pretty good. So I feel like, you know, if they just blow past everyone in the rest of the season, they maybe can get ranking in there, you know.
They might be able to, and I know we've been talking about the fight of the mean green, but when we come back, we'll talk about some fights that happened in the octagon.
Ugh, a 20-minute walk? I don't want to do this right now.
Don't worry, you can just use Transit.
Transit? What's that?
Transit is a mobile app that provides real-time tracking to connect buses, UNT shuttles, and even A-trains. Simply download the app, then tap on the search bar and type where you want to go. In a matter of seconds, you get results for all available routes. And the best part of it is, it's completely free for UNT students. What are you doing?
I'm downloading it right now.
Download Transit today and remember, make life better without a car.
Hey Alex, this guy on the internet says he wants to give me money.
That sounds suspicious.
What do you mean?
Typically, strangers who promise you money on the internet have their own best interest in mind. They often use bounce checks, which will disappear shortly after depositing, but not before they've asked for some money in return.
So he doesn't really want to spoil me.
No.
Well, then what should I do?
The best way to handle it is to block and report the suspicious message, or even consult local law enforcement if you've already fallen victim.
So I guess we aren't going to Key West for spring break.
No.
Are you behind on your credit hours? Got more time on your hands this winter? Then you need to sign up for winter sessions. Do not delay, sign up today. Visit registration.unt.edu/winter session for more information or see your advisor.
Welcome back to SportsZone. We're going to talk about the UFC 306. We had some pretty exciting fights. Here to talk about the past fights with me is Nash Lowry and Jose Moreno.
UFC 306? It's Noche UFC! And today's the 16th of September, Mexican Independence Day. Viva la raza! And let's begin talking about
lay this out.
a great event overall. Ooh,
Here, I got my notebook to lay it down.
what a fight! What a fight night, huh?
What a everything. What an everything.
Everything.
I mean, you guys quite literally just took my words away.
I'm ready. Okay.
Let's talk about the main card since y'all are so hyped about it. What were your thoughts? Sean O'Malley versus Merab. Jose, let's hear your takes.
I can't believe that Sean O'Malley has lost all that swagger he's kind of had these past few years that he's built upon. He kind of built
Because he did that video with Jake Paul.
Not just that, but like this is a guy, look at him, he's getting his butt whooped by Merab right there. and everyone was saying this is a huge disadvantage for Sugar Sean O'Malley. The guy is a sniper. He looks for his hit, he waits for his punch. The thing about a guy like Merab is he's not gonna punch you and wait for you to punch him back. He's just gonna hit you with a takedown and throw you down. And the entire time, Merab was just kind of being Sean O'Malley's father.
And check out the range that Merab is using in this fight. He distanced himself really far away from Sean, which is really odd because Sean has like 4 inches height-wise on
Exactly.
him. So how does he manage that distance, Jose?
You know, what's so funny about that, Nash, is you and I just kind of discussed this, that with that height advantage that Sean O'Malley had, Merab had to gain so much weight. He was a lot stockier and kind of looked more like, how you say,
this
like,
was more a lightweight fight.
more of a lightweight fight. I mean, he didn't look like a bantam out there. Look at him raising the hands. The honorary Mexican Merab. I love this guy. Boring fighter, but my God, is he an incredible personality. And
he got the win.
He did.
I mean,
He did.
may be a boring fighter, but he did get the win. Let's talk about some more entertaining fights then. We've got the Ronaldo versus Osborne and the Rubovic versus Zellhuber. Which one did you guys think was the more entertaining fight, Nash?
So personally, I'm going to go with Rubovic versus Zellhuber. I was more of a fan of the total chip war that was happening, Jose.
Yeah.
These guys were going band for band, M for M, like punch for punch with these guys. They were backing up like they were bloodied up by the end of that fight. Rubovic did a really good job of cutting up Zellhuber, and I was really impressed with Zellhuber's defense. I honestly thought that Zellhuber's defense was even better than his offense. You can see him get rocked, and he heads back towards the cage. And then you're going to see just a little bit of the Prince Nassim fighting style. You can see a lot of head movement. Like, yes, he's getting
all up in there.
He's getting absolutely splattered right now, but he's able to run away and stay up. His chin in this fight was crazy, Jose.
To me, what's also more incredible is for Rebovich to keep that energy just swinging away. My uncle was a boxer, my dad was a boxer, so I was forced into boxing classes when I was a kid. I used to punch a punching bag for 4 minutes, and I would run out of breath. And I was an energetic 15-year-old, right?
Right.
The problem, like not the problem, but it's incredible to see a fighter punch that fast, punch that hard, and not get the knockout. That's a big shout out to Zellhuber right there. But Rebovich, to keep up that stamina. Over here on camera is Adam, and Adam, I showed him clips of the match, and even he was like, Jesus Christ, Zellhuber has one of the biggest chins in history. He's like Quagmire out there. The guy just can't be put down. Like a dog, he can't be put down.
How does a player take that many hits like
player?
that? Or a fighter,
I
sorry.
mean, he's
a player now. He's a player now. Hey, seriously, but I mean, a guy to take that much hit, he's Mexican. That's what we do. We just take it. Not in that way, but we take it. We take it like in the face. We take it in the gut. We take it. Why are you guys laughing? But no, in all seriousness, Mexicans have historically good chins. Look at mine. Look at that.
Oh my
It's a good
gosh.
chin. It's a good chin.
You gotta.
Yeah, I mean, if
Yes.
Nash could punch me, I
Exa-
probably would have got as long.
Yeah.
But, hey, I'd probably set up a fight.
But
still.
I gotta give it to Rubovic. He definitely had the more entertaining fight over Osborne and Ronaldo.
I don't know. Ronaldo and Osborne's match was just true graps, dude. I think one thing I loved about Ronaldo is it felt like a Bugs Bunny episode where you just see Osborne tried to put him in all these different submission holds and just jumping out of it, Ronaldo, everything. He was like Speedy Gonzalez out there. Shout out Speedy Gonzalez. But seriously, it was an incredible match to watch as a big grapple fan because when you watch just the intelligence of these guys to know, okay, I'm 3 steps ahead of this guy's movement. I always say that boxing is the human checkers, MMA is the human chess.
Ooh,
and once
that's a great way to look at that.
Yeah, once you go into the specifics of ground game, it's an incredible sport to watch, and that's why I love it. But I can also see the dynamite stick action in freaking Zahuber versus
And the interesting, whenever it comes to Ronaldo Rodriguez versus Osborne, is that the most entertaining part of the fight was Ronaldo getting out of a guillotine. Yes, it was amazing, the footwork and the positioning with his neck that he used to get out of that. Yes, it was amazing. But would you rather see how many punches we saw in that highlight with the dodging?
Can we roll that
going
highlight
on
again?
from
Please roll that
like,
highlight
oh my
again.
gosh, his defense back up against the cage, that was like star-studded, the greatest thing. You can just sit whenever you're watching.
There we go. There we got the highlight.
Yes.
Thank you, Drew. Can we all get a big thank you, Drew, in the chat?
Yeah.
Look at that. Boom.
He's just
taking it, dude. This is why I watch this sport. Just fighting spirit.
Just insane, the fights that
Insane.
went on.
Yeah, so these guys did great, but what other fights do we have to talk about?
We got to talk about the women's flyweight, the co-main, Valentina versus Alexa Grasso, excuse me. It's a very one-sided fight. Jose, you're banging the table.
I can't watch Alexa Grasso fight. Genuinely, not because she's a bad fighter. She's an incredible fighter, but I literally adore this woman. She's one of my favorite fighters, an inspiration to me as well, just her story. And to see her get her butt whooped by Valentina Shevchenko was just not fun.
To be fair, they have met. This is their third time meeting.
But like Alexa's first win was considered a miracle. Alexa's second match was considered her getting her
a
butt
win's a
saved.
win. A win is a win.
No. And I agree. It's a win's a win, but Shevchenko is the second greatest women's fighter of all time behind Amanda Nunes.
Right.
Easily, right? And tonight, even me and Ash were saying, if Grasso wins, do we think Grasso gets put in that conversation of top 3, top 2? I mean, she beat Shevchenko not once, but twice at that point. But it felt like the pressure was just too much for her. And Shevchenko really came into it prepared. You know, the number one way to put it into words is I watched The Ultimate Fighter. Grasso and Shevchenko were the Ultimate Fighter trainers. There was an episode where they were playing basketball. And Grasso was just so unfocused in the game of basketball, while Shevchenko was just loaded in. Even in a game of basketball, Shevchenko was determined to beat Grasso, while Grasso just saw it as a fun challenge. That's what told me the difference in these mentalities, these fighters. If this girl's going into this game that's just supposed to be for fun and murdering her
It's like the LeBron
opponent,
and Jordan mentality.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, LeBron could never beat Jordan in a game of 21, dude. Or, not the basketball game. I'm talking about blackjack.
Oh my gosh.
LeBron's not a good gambler, okay? Jordan's a way better gambler.
Okay, so in my opinion, I think this third match was favored more towards Shevchenko.
I agree.
Going into it. I mean, you look at it, you're right, exactly. It's 1, Amanda Nunes, and then 2, we have Shevchenko.
Right.
And Shevchenko's just the more intelligent fighter compared to Grasso. And I was on the fence on who it was going into this fight, but after this fight, Shevchenko won all 5 rounds. And yes, like behind the crippling face, it was true. She totally dominated.
She did.
She totally
It's like,
dominated the
dang.
half guard, and really just having the scouting report after, because the second match was a split decision. The first match was an instant choke, an instant chokehold by Grasso.
Yeah.
So after having over 50 minutes of in-cage time between each other, I think the advantage definitely went to Valentina.
Without a doubt. I mean, Shevchenko showed to us that night why she's the greatest fighter of all time. It reminds me of George St. Pierre. You know, he lost twice, but he got his revenge both times. And to see that in real time, I've only been a fan for the past 5 years of UFC, but to finally get to see a champion avenge their win, it was incredible to see. And it really reminded me shades of Israel beating Pereira. It's shades of George St. Pierre finally getting his big wins. Their names are evading me right now, but later I'll kick myself in the head for remembering their names. But it's incredible to see those moments in UFC. And honestly, this kind of cements Shevchenko as number 2 forever. She got her victory, but what's left for her?
Well, do you guys see these two fighters meeting again? Or do you think, third time's the charm, you got the fight you got, and they probably won't meet again?
Going into this one, this was already the last one.
Yeah,
Do you agree?
I agree. I think it's good that these guys have a win-win-win.
Yes.
And it's a set win, and it tells a great story for Shevchenko.
Because now it's a 1-1-1, and that's a decent hill to die on. Now with Grasso, it's just a matter of you're not going to win against Shevchenko. You really got to wait for her to retire. Grasso is 31. So you just got to wait for Shevchenko to retire, and then I do see her getting back up there.
Right. I'm thinking maybe we get Valentina versus, Wei Li. That's what's next for Valentina. Maybe one big money matchup. She becomes a double champion.
Right.
Wei Li, probably, she's already beaten everyone. I think that's the best spot you can go with Valentina. But for Grasso, you got to think, you have to rebuild the path now. You have to keep being a draw now. You lost to Shevchenko embarrassingly. I mean, how do you come back from this? Her next fight, she has to win in a big manner because, my God, this was a very disappointing showcase from in my opinion, one of the best women's fighters in the world.
Right, and UFC 306 was very, very entertaining. When we come back, we'll look ahead as the Olympics are over and jump to the Olympics in 2028, all after the break.
I'm so tired. I feel ugly. I'm not okay. I didn't know UNT had counseling services. Maybe I should check it out. This looks like the place.
Willis Library, located at the University of North Texas. It has computers, printers, and the building is open 24/7. By going online, you can book up to an hour of reserved space and one of the many private study rooms. Many of them are equipped with whiteboards, a table, and a TV to hook up to your computer. Textbooks can be checked out for free with a student ID. They also have many of these in ebook forms. This is still a library, so always remember to be quiet and respectful of other surroundings, especially in certain places where talking is not allowed. For example, the 3rd and 4th floor are completely quiet. As you can see, Willis Library has many options for students, with it offering many media sources and staying open all the time.
Welcome back to SportsZone. I'm Makenzie Freeman, and as I mentioned in the last block, the Olympics this year are over, so we'll look ahead to the Olympics in LA in 2028, and here to talk about that with me is Valentina Rojas Janifeld and Alexander Salazar. Guys, there's a lot of sports being added. We've got flag football, baseball and softball, cricket, squash, and lacrosse. We're going to talk about flag football first. There was a little bit of talk on Instagram the other day where a flag football player, Duchette, said that he doesn't think NFL players can play as good as at flag football as flag football players. What are your all's thoughts on that?
Well, I completely agree. I mean, if we look at other sports, you can look at soccer in the Olympics, and obviously they don't let players like Ronaldo or Messi or even like Neymar play because it would be an advantage that other countries don't have. And if we look at the NFL and like football in general, the U.S. is the powerhouse of that sport, and other countries don't have that ability or that teams and players that they can use for the Olympics. So it would be a completely advantage to the US that other countries don't have. And on top of that, you have the NFL players, they would have to rearrange their whole tactics. And yes, they know how to play flag football, but it would be so unfair to all of the flag football players out there that have worked so hard and it's finally their time to shine, and just for it to be taken away by the NFL stars and big names that would just not bring the same energy that they would have wanted the whole time.
Well, respectfully, I think I have to disagree with you. I don't think it's a question of if the players are going to play for flag football. I think it's a question of if the Olympic Committee will let them play flag football. We saw in the Pro Bowl this year and the previous years that they introduced flag football as the main event for the game, which, first of all, that completely saved the game itself, because initially when it was padded and tackle football, nobody would ever watch it. But now with flag football as the main event, that's something that people would watch. And guys like Lamar Jackson and Tyreek Hill, they would be incredible in flag football. And so I think the question is not if the players would want to play, because I think all the players would want to play, and they would be as great as they are in the NFL as they are in flag football. But I think it's a question of whether the Olympic Committee will let the players play.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because you do see sometimes where there will be a professional league and they won't let them use those players in the Olympics. Where do you think the football players are going to land? Do you think it's going to be professional flag football players, or do you think, they'll allow NFL players? Where do you think they'll pull from?
I honestly do think that it's going to be more of it's only going to be professional flag football players. Like you mentioned, I do think it's going to be a bit unfair to other nations that I think the U.S. might be the only country or one of the only countries that produce NFL players. So it will be unfair to most of the rest of the world to have guys like Lamar or Tyreek Hill play.
And on top of that, you have to make sure that there's no problems with them wanting to play, because a lot of them might not want to play since it's really close to the season and they might risk injuries. And so it can be
especially so close to
especially to the preseason training camp and everything. So it is not the same as basketball players going up to the Olympics, because they have a lot of time waiting before their season begins, but so close to the time that they're going to start having to go to training camps and everything. If they risk an injury for something that is part of their career but is not what they've been doing their whole life, I think it would be pretty risky for them, and it would be a question of, do they want to do it and take that risk?
And I know we all three live in Texas, so we can sit here and talk about football forever, but we're going to move on to baseball. This I'm really interested in. I know most of these sports, except for cricket, are fairly American sports, but baseball might be the one that I could see the United States not having the best roster. You look at that Japanese roster, they beat us in the World Baseball Classic 3-2 in 2023. The team has Shohei Ohtani. They have Yamamoto, exactly. So, is Japan the secret favorite?
I mean, just Ohtani has revolutionized baseball as a whole. And on top of that, not only is Japan one of the biggest ones, but we have other countries obviously Dominican Republic, Venezuela, a lot of Latin countries love baseball, and they have a very big following. So it's not like the flag football where the U.S. is the only big powerhouse. There are so many countries that love and adore baseball, and Japan is a big one. Korea too, they have stars that are gonna put baseball in the Olympic map and not just football, So I think Ohtani is amazing. He revolutionized everything. And I don't think they're on an even pace. Yes, we have young talent coming up in the rising, and in 4 years it's going to be amazing. But I still think that Japan has the upper level compared to other countries.
Well, I don't think there's an argument of whether or not Shohei Ohtani is excellent. He's obviously, he's a two-time MVP for a reason, obviously. So I don't think there's an argument there. But I think the argument between the United States and Japan, whether or not these two countries are equal in terms of talent, I'd say right now I would say it's equal, but in 4 years, I mean, Shohei Ohtani and Shota Umanga, they're going to be 34 and 35 respectfully. And with the U.S., young talent like Gunnar Henderson, C.J. Abrams, Corbin Carroll, Evan Carter, and Paul Skeens, they did not play at the World Baseball Classic, but they will most likely be in L.A. at 2028. And they're going to have a lot of experience on their hands, so look for them to make big-time plays for the U.S. So I think when 2028 rolls around, I think the U.S. will have the upper hand.
Right, and I also want to touch on softball being part of the Olympics because – you look at the Oklahoma Sooners and the talent that goes through there. Do you think by putting softball in the Olympics, we might see, a professional softball league start up?
I mean, I would really love that. I mean, I think a lot of sports have taken that leap of faith in the women's sports, and it's been gaining a lot of recognition. So it would be amazing to first introduce them in the Olympics and see how it does with the world, and see if WMLB could be a possibility in the future. It would be amazing, and they're very good players all around the country too.
Right.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We've seen the popularity of the WNBA rise exponentially this year, mostly in part thanks to the young college stars like Angel Reese and all these other players like Caitlin Clark. So I would agree, this Oklahoma Sooners softball team was amazing this year. So I think that, introducing that into the Olympics would be revolutionary for a professional softball league to possibly be introduced.
And moving on to the next sport, it's not America's pastime. We're going to move on to cricket, which the United States isn't really known for their cricket teams, but they recently upset Pakistan in the T20 Power Cup. Do you think the U.S. could be a dark horse in cricket, or do you see other countries succeeding at that? Alex?
It was amazing what they did.
It was a fluke.
I remember seeing the news about it, and I'm like, I didn't even know really that we had a cricket team. But the story itself was an incredible story. But in the Olympics this year, I mean, there's just too many nations like Australia, India, England, South Africa, Sri Lanka, and Pakistan who they beat. But I think just those nations are just too good for the Olympics to handle. And while it would be incredible to see them make another run like they did in this year, but I just don't think that they can do it with all the star power that these other nations have.
And Val?
I mean, there's 50 top countries that have cricket as one of their main sport. And India takes number 1, and United States is not even until the 32th, number, So it's like, obviously it's amazing seeing these people trying to get that sport and, bring it up. But there's so much power everywhere. There's a reason why this sport has been known for it being in the East Asia and everything like that. It just has that power from everybody, and it's just very loved. Even here we have recreational leagues, and a lot of the times it's immigrants that are in this country and they just want to play their sport. So the main reason that the U.S. has gained that is because people have immigrated from those countries and brought the sport here so they could find a piece of home. So obviously, I think it's great that they're bringing this sport because there's so many viewers around the world that would want to watch it, but I don't think the U.S. will have that upper hand against these countries that have played it forever and have professional teams and leagues, unlike a recreational league,
Right, and when they released what sports would be added to the Olympics, I looked and it said squash, and at first I was like, what is squash? So it's a fairly niche sport. It's sort of like racquetball.
Well, you play against the wall.
Yeah.
And it is very common in Europe. Even in Mexico, it's very popular. So I think it will get a lot of attention.
But it's fairly niche in the U.S. And one other sport that we saw that was fairly niche that blew up was pickleball. Do you think squash being in the Olympics will help it have a pickleball-like blow up?
I mean, yes, but really quick, I'm just going to say pickleball seems like a recreational thing, and it's very accessible. You can go to restaurants and they have it, and it's just fun. I think squash is very fast and very entertaining, so it will probably fit more in that Olympic sport rather than pickleball being a fun thing you do with your friends.
Kind of like badminton.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us on SportsZone this week. If you want some behind-the-scenes content, be sure to follow us on our socials at NTTV_sports and tune in on Thursday to hear some more about the upcoming Cowboys games. And we'll see you next week at the same time.